Good evening once again, and welcome to another episode of Capsules of Love. I am your host once again, Richard Albert Lawrence Sr. And remember what God says. God says, yes, I love you. A resounding yes. I love you with an everlasting love. On this episode of Capsule of Love, on election night, actually, I want to just speak for a few minutes about knowing your star player. Knowing your star player. Or better yet, who's your star candidate? The star player is you. And if you are the star player, then you're going to need a star coach. In this episode, the star coach is actually your candidate. Who's your star candidate? For us that are believers, our star candidate is one. He is an army of one. He is the one who places leaders in authority, and he is the one who takes leaders out of power. And if we are his children, and we are, then we understand that individually we are all his star player. So today, on election day, you are a star player. Hopefully you went out and you did your civic duty by voting for the candidate that you believe is the one that your star candidate God would have you to vote for. Here are a few things to keep in mind as you go throughout this day waiting for the results to pour in. Number one, irrespective of who your candidate is that wins, your star candidate, which is God, says these words about you and I, his star players. Jeremiah 29:11. He says, yes, I know the plans that I have for you. They are plans that's going to prosper you, plans never to harm you, plans that's not going to plans that will bring you to a good outcome. So we understand then, irrespective of who your candidate is that you vote for this election or who my candidate is, it is our star candidate Christ who determines who that leader is going to be. And irrespective of that leader, guess what? It doesn't change what God's plan says. His plans for you and I are good. So good, we are already ahead of the game. Number two, God says that it is He who places leaders in authority. 1 Timothy chapter 1, verses 1 and 2 says, I exhort therefore that first of all prayers, intercession, giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings, and for all that are in authority. That includes our presidential candidates. For it is a good thing, God says, for us to have leaders that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God our Savior, who would have all men to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. So we understand then that it's God who places our presidential leaders into office. And if God is placing them in office, why are we worried about if God says his plans are good and all we need to do is to just pray for the leaders that will be in office, that his will for our lives will be done? If that doesn't help you, let's look in the Old Testament and see what God says. 2 Chronicle chapter 7 verse 14. God says these words, if my people, see that word if my people, you and I that are believers, who are called by his name, would humble ourselves and seek his face and turn from our wicked ways, then we will hear from heaven, and then he will heal our land. He never said that about our presidential candidates. He said that about his star players, you and I, his children. If we turn to him as our star candidate, he will put a candidate in office that will do good for us. Good. Look at Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. He says, fear not, for I am with you. Fear not, I am with you, no matter who is in office. Don't worry about who is in office, because God says, I am going to be with you, irrespective of who that candidate is, because I am the star candidate who makes all things, who makes all the decisions. No one cannot withstand my decisions when I make them. He says it this way, forever. All of my counsels, all of my plans, they're already settled in heaven. So we're just fulfilling what he have already predestined and preordained for us. Look at Psalm 61. In Psalm 61, it says, I cry out to you, Lord, day and night, and you hear me. And because you hear me, you will protect me from the enemy. Do you think God is going to put a candidate in office that is going to be your enemy? When God says, who I place in office is working for me, they are just the earthly candidate, but I am the sole candidate that runs and determines all things. God says, put your trust in Him. Look at Ephesians chapter 5. In Ephesians chapter 5, God says, in the midst of what's going on, even when it's not your candidate that wins, God says, you must just sing songs and hymns and spiritual songs in your heart to your star candidate, which is Him. For He is the one that will cause the time to be redeemed. He is the one that will turn things in your favor. Even the children of Israel, when they were in Goshen, which is in the middle of Egypt, when all sicknesses, all the 10 plagues were happening in Egypt, nothing happened to the children of Israel while they were in Goshen, irrespective of who is in power. God promises to protect you and I. And here's the final thing God says you and I should do. In Psalms 136 and in Psalms 118, God says, oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for He is good. Your star candidate, God says, oh, give thanks unto me, your star candidate, for I am good. My mercy endures forever. He says it is better for you to put your trust and confidence in God than to put your trust and confidence in your star candidate, whether it be Kamala Harris or whether it be Donald Trump. Don't you see? God is making literally a mockery of all of us who dare to believe that our star earthly candidate is the one that's going to fulfill our desires and our needs, when He says He is the one who fulfill all of our needs. And finally, Lamentations chapter 3 verses 23, 24, 25 says, everything we need each and every day, it is His hands that have provided them for us, not our presidential candidate who will occupy the White House. God says it is my hands that provides them. So, if you have not yet voted for your star candidate, go out and cast your ballot for the one you would like to see. But at the end of it all, pray and ask God to let Him be your star candidate, to move upon the heart of the candidates that are seeking office, that His will, His plans for you and I would come to fruition, and that we may lead a prosperous and a good life. If this video has been a blessing to you, I would ask you, like it, yes, but please share it. Encourage someone in this political climate, where there is nothing else that's being espoused but rhetoric, hate, divisiveness. God doesn't espouse us that. Our star candidate, God does not espouse us that. God says we must love Him and we must love neighbors as we love ourselves. So the same way we began this video is the same way we end it. Your star candidate, God says, yes, I love you. A resounding yes. I love you with an everlasting love. Irrespective of who your candidate is, whether your candidate win or not. Remember, as children of His, we have a command to pray for those that are in office, because this is the will of our star candidate God, so that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and God bless you. Good night.